So I was talking about natural language generation, and not many people are aware of it. So it actually falls under NLP only. So all of you would be, I think, some way or the other know what NLP is. So it's basically taking natural language or text or any unstructured kind of a data in language and extracting information out of it. So information can be anything. It can be an intent, or it can be something like what are the different named entities there, nouns, pronouns, and sarcasm, and semantics, and a lot of things. So this is what NLG basically does, is that it takes the text or the natural language and the data or the structured data, and it converts it into language back. So many of you would be thinking, what is the use case of such a system? Why would we take data and we will try to generate something like a language out of it? What is the use of it? So I would be talking about that. So first of all, this is what the natural language is. So it's a method of generating natural language from any logical representation of data. When I say logical representation of data, it has to follow some kind of structured form, a structured form which can be interpreted by some kind of machine, something like a spreadsheet, or it can be something like a RDF triplets, or it can be some ontologies, XMLs, JSONs. It can be a data which has some kind of a logical representation or structure. So I will show you more about how actually our NLG system works by giving you a demo. So one second. So this is a small demo wherein we will take some structured data, and I will try to show how it can actually generate insights. So when I say that this is an NLG system, what we basically try to mean is that we take in data and we try to extract information and what to talk about, analyze, reason, and write like a human being, and that too in multiple languages. So this is a demo that I would like to show you. How many of you know about that companies publish their financials, like quarterly financials and annual financials? So I will start with WSJ, Wall Street Journal. So they generally have financial for different companies. So any
video play करना है.
Yeah, so I was talking about financials of companies. So companies publish their financial for quarter, for yearly, and all those. So what I will do is I will take the WSJ's financial. I will go to the website, and let's say this is Apple's financial that we have. And you want to know how the company has been performing in this quarter. So for doing that, you will have to actually go and see the entire data that is there. And this is the kind of structured data that I'm talking about, a logical form where you have data, and now you have to make decision whether it's a good stock, if you have to buy it, or if the company is performing good or bad. So it's too much data to actually fathom upon and get to some conclusion. Like right now, if I have to ask any of you to if you can tell me in like less than 1 minute of how Apple stocks are performing, or how Apple as a company is performing, so it's difficult. So how do we do it is that what I will do is that I will just copy this URL. and I will paste it here. And I will say analyze. And the report that you get with charts and language is that what I'm talking about. So it can be any company that you can say that I have chosen Apple because, but you can say any company, and I can show you how the company is performing, what are the sales revenue, how have they increased, what is the reason for that. So I think the biggest reason people use NLG is to, you can always see charts and you can always understand how things are growing or how things are changing. But you can never understand how and why things are happening. So the diagnostics part of it is something which is very difficult for charts or dashboards to actually communicate. So that is where NLG comes in. So what NLG does is that it not only talks about what is happening, it will also talk about why it is happening and what can we do about it. So this is a simple example of where NLG as a solution can be very useful. So I will go back and I will talk about NLG again. Okay, so I think all of you here have got a fair idea of what actually NLG is and what is the use case and where it can be used. So I will just go down and talk a little bit more about how it is different from other NLP tasks. So basically everything which is natural language comes into natural language processing. So what you can see right now is that we have NLG, we have NLU, and by extension NLQ is I think a part of NLU only. But I will like to keep it different because there are different methods of actually solving NLQ nowadays. So right now, as you can see, the JSONs or CSVs or databases, and you get a report out of it. So it generates human language from data or any logical representation, as I have already told you about. Now, what is NLU? So many of the conversational chatbots or interfaces wherein you take text or some kind of intent and try to find out what is the semantic, the tone, or if there is sarcasm in the tone, so something like this. So this is where NLU comes in. It takes in that textual data and it will extract information. And by information, I mean to say the intent or what the person wants. So this is what NLU does. And by extension, NLQ is kind of a specific use case of NLU, I will say. But what happens nowadays is that in the industry, many a times there's so much data, first of all. And not everyone knows SQL or structured query language to query databases. And because data is very relevant for the sectors or the business users, so it's very difficult for them to actually get the data on the real time whenever they want. So there is a use case which is being developed nowadays, which is being adopted by multiple companies like Salesforce, and even Tableau has it, wherein you can go and you can directly ask question in natural language, and it will query it will convert your request or your query into a structured query kind of a language, and it will extract the information for you and it will show it on your dashboard. So this is NLQ. So this is how different NLP tasks are right now. So I will go back and I will talk about what are the different use cases, like the one that you have seen right now, but there can be multiple use cases. So before starting with this, I will like you to understand that what is NLG and which kind of fields it should be used for. So when there is a lot of data and you need to personalize reports and at scale, so that is where NLG comes in. And what I'm trying to say here is we cannot write poetries using NLG. That is completely, it can be done, but we are far removed, I think 50 years from now, that we will be able to write poetries, systems will be able to be artistic enough to actually write poetries. So we are talking about systems which are very data heavy. When I say data heavy is that you need to report, you want to talk about a lot of things, and you need some kind of medium to talk in. So charts and dashboards, as I've already told you about, have their limitations. You cannot connect things. If you see a dashboard, like I also see a lot of dashboards, you guys also would be using Tableau and Power BIs and clicks. And if there is a dashboard, you have to apply your own brain to get to some conclusion. So this is where these kind of solutions can come in. So when I say financial advisor, many of you would be investing and you would have your own portfolios. But think about it, if you can get a kind of a report of what kind of stocks you have invested in, and it's a personalized report, and what is your risk, how should you diversify it, what kind of stocks you should buy. So these kind of things will only come with personalization. Like I will give you an example of one of our clients. So he has around 500,000 investors. So they have portfolio accounts for them, and we are generating personalized reports, portfolios for them for 500,000 clients every month. So each person will log into the system, and what they can see really is that how are they performing, how is their stock performing. So for them, it's like a report that has been written just for them. So it's very personalized on scale. So we are sending 500,000 reports whenever a person logs in. So right now, the scale is around 1 million reports we are generating for this client for this kind of a use case, wherein people go and see what kind of portfolio and how is the investment in that. So now second thing is writing product descriptions. So right now, as you know that e-commerce and retail has gone online completely. It is now based on e-commerce. So there are multiple, and there are like millions and millions of products out there. And you must have gone and bought a phone or something, and you would be knowing that you go and you see that there's a product description, and you see that in the description the way it is written that your phone is good and this is good for gamers and maybe you should buy this. So there's a complete description that can be personalized. Right now it's very automated. Even if people are trying to do it, I will give a small anecdote about it. That the founder of our founder Nirav actually was working for a media company, and that is the job of the people that were doing it. So what they used to do basically is that they used to go and they used to hire a lot of freshers who were not good at English and all, and there was no structure. So they used to sit down and they used to generate content for these websites and for e-commerce platforms. So this is very difficult to manage, and the structure, the quality, the language, so everything was like completely out of control. So he thought of a method wherein we can actually control and create something which can actually generate descriptions on the fly. So this is where these kind of systems come in. So you can give us some data and it will generate a personalized report on the fly for millions of different products. So you will say this, even I can do it. Like I will take some key values and I will put some kind of a template and I will just say that this is the point. So we call it advanced NLG, because here when you're talking about two sentences, let's say that this product is good and there's a phone, like a phone is black in color and my phone has 5 megapixel memory. So there are two sentences, but when to combine them, when not to combine them, understanding what kind of audience it is for. So creating the same product description which is different for different use cases of different people who are audience or buyers who are looking at. So this is where product descriptions come in. So afterwards, what we can talk about is an analyst. So as you know, all you guys are getting trained for becoming data scientist and data analyst. So good part of your job would be to crunch numbers and put it into dashboards which can be consumed by business users. So there are two things that I've already talked about. So people who would be creating reports, data scientists and analysts, and people who would be consuming it. So the problem is that what you want to talk about or intend to talk about, you will put it in a dashboard and you will assume that the other person will understand it on its own. But that never happens. Everyone has different experiences with life. They have different they have different expertise on the topic that you are putting it forward. So different people will understand different things from the same dashboard. And what this causes is that people will take different decisions. So there is a gap between people who are generating or creating reports and people who are consuming it. So NLG is a very good way to bridge this gap, wherein you can take the data, you will create a report, but you can at the same time generate small summaries about what to look into or how things are moving around and what to focus on. So what I'm trying to say is that getting crisp insights from the data small crisp insights rather than looking at the dashboards and figuring out what is happening in there. If you can get the crisp insights, then a lot of automation can happen in the jobs of even analysts. So a lot of work or dashboards can be automated just by putting these insights. Like right now I'm presenting these things. These are pictures in front of you. What is the need of mine? Because I have to come here and explain it to you that what is happening and what is there. You cannot just see and understand everything on your own. So this is what it's trying to bridge the gap between what I have created this presentation and when I'm showing it to you. So this talking is something which I can do using maybe a TTS system by figuring out what kind of language I want to put in. And this is where analyst or this kind of job can come in. And the fourth is that I think it can disrupt a bit of media industry is that journalism. Robo-journalism is a trend now. Many of our competitors in US have started, actually one of our competitors was acquired by Associated Press. It's a big media firm in US and overall. And what basically they used to do is that they had a lot of information around financials, or there were a lot of sports related or weather related articles that were generated every day. But these are very data heavy, as I said. And these can be combined together to generate reports or generate articles which can be directly consumed by people. So financial reports can the kind of report that I have shown you right now is something that you will read in newspapers many a times. That this is the company is moving, how it is, and at the same time, let's say a cricket match. So a cricket match is something which is in the similar league, wherein there's a ball and ball by score of whatever is happening. So we can have a story around it, and we can actually write complete reports of how things have happened in robo-journalism. So this is something which is also a very useful use case out here. So the next questions comes in is how to build an NLG system. So if I have to talk about that, then there are 3 steps wherein the document planning stage, the micro planning, and the final stage is service realization. So how I actually think about it is that document planning is the stage wherein you talk about what is important or what to talk about. And the micro planning and surface realization part that you can see in here is more about how to say it. So when I will talk about it, let's say that we are trying to generate sales report for a store. So there are multiple stores in a region, and each store manager will get his own report, let's say. So what are the KPIs which is important for a sales manager? Maybe overview of how his sales have gone, his target versus achievement, how his team has performed, how his peers are performing, and a lot of different market shares and all those things. So I know what kind of KPIs that I want to focus upon. So this is that content selection layer. So at context selection layer, you talk about that these are different things that is happening. But for this report, I think these things have actually changed and should be included in the report. So it's kind of a decision model which will try to find out what is there in the KPIs or the analysis that we have done which should be included in the report. So that is the content selection or what we call it a document planning layer, or it's also called macro planning. So once you have the KPIs that you want to talk about, the second layer that comes in is how do you want to talk about it? So I understood that you have got some sentences you want to talk about it. So the layer that you can say here is that the text planning layer, or what you will get is a lexifications. So you have some grammar or some rules written there, and you want to generate sentences out of it. You have some KPIs, you have some grammar that you have already built, and you want to put all together to actually generate a sentence. But generating sentence in itself is not NLG. Like it's completely then rule-based, template-based kind of a system. So how does it differentiate itself is by adding variations, first of all. So when you are writing something, if I read a product description and I go and see a million product descriptions and all of them are looking same, I will understand this is machine generated, it's nowhere close to human. So what I'm trying to say is that human generated text is quite different from a machine generated text. And how is it different? That grammar, the cohesiveness, the richness in grammar, how does you actually achieve that? So I will give you some example that is there, like sentence aggregation. Let's say there are 2 sentences out there. First one says, Ram is a good boy. And the second one talks about, and Ram goes to school. So there are 2 sentences, right? But if I write it down, Ram is a good boy and Ram goes to school, it's useless. because people would understand, yeah, he's taking something, some object and some entity and is trying to put it and fit it and trying to show some kind of sentence. So what we do is that we have an aggregation layer. So what it will do is that it will take Ram is a good boy and he goes to school. So combining these two things actually increases the value of what you're trying to do. And this is where NLG comes in. And the second thing that you can see is referring expression generations. It's basically talks about, let's say, Ram is a good boy and Ram goes to school, but I don't want to talk about Ram now. I want to talk about he or they. So figuring out when to put he or they or other pronouns in the system when you're trying to, because basically there is a grammar which is behind. Now you want to put these kind of things, when to aggregate stuff and when to actually put it into a way that it actually makes some sense, has some rich grammar into it. So that is where this, micro planning, also called sentence level planning, comes in. So you actually try to combine what kind of how can you generate a very grammar rich sentence. And third and final stage is surface serialization. So it basically talks about where to, if the spellings are correct, or if the punctuations are at the right place, if the commas are there, if the sentence is even making some sense. So those kind of things. So this is where surface serialization comes in. And finally, we will get our report. So this is how you build an NLG system. I will show you some different ways that people try to, build this system. So initially, we had the template-based system that you can see. The most common technique wherein what you do is you have some kind of a template and you just fill slots. So this is very simple and an old technique of actually doing NLG. But the problem with this kind of system was that, first of all, I will talk about why these systems are good and have been used in industry for a very long time, is that first of all, it's conceptually very simple. Anyone can make it. Anyone can make it, anyone can train it. There's actually no training. Anyone can develop this kind of a system. But the problem, and a very good thing about it is that if you have a, let's say a template and you want to talk about it, so a very good thing about it is that it's very easy for a person to actually create a template which is very specific for an industry. So the quality of the insight that you get or the quality of the report is very good in template-based systems. But the problem is that they cannot scale well. So if you have a template, one template for one kind of a report, and you cannot generate anything out of it. You have just one template. It's manually very intensive, and it's very difficult to actually repeatedly encode these rules and put it, and there's hardly any variations. It's a template. So you don't have variations. So the same template would, like many of you have seen that let's say the mails that sometimes you get, it's the same template. So there's no variations. You know that it is not personalized for you. It's not something that has taken into context what kind of person you are and what kind of things that you have done earlier. So this is a very old and very but this is very much used and relevant even now in many industries. It is a part of NLG, but not the NLG that we are talking about here. Now, the second part is, create your own grammar rules. I have written CFGs here. Many of you who have done computer science would be knowing what context-free grammars are. But context-free grammars are good, but they cannot actually come to a place that they can replace how a sentence or the natural nuances of a language that human beings have. So natural language can be used. CFGs have been used for generating sentences, but they are very simple systems. They cannot create those rich sentences that we are talking about here. So how do you come to those kind of systems? So the pros of this kind of system is very flexible, far more flexible than template-based systems. Then the cons are it's difficult to add rules. How many rules you can add about the world and how many things you can talk about. So this is the main problem with these kind of systems. Now, finally, we come to a method that has arrived. It is mostly statistical. I would still say that it is in the research and academia kind of a field right now. And even for us, it's a struggle or challenge. It's a struggle, it's a challenge for us to actually build these kind of systems. So the main problem with this kind of system is that good thing is that you don't have to write rules now. So all you need is a parallel corpora. So you need to have data and let's say some kind of data, or I will say more of a text of parallel corpus, and you have to train it on them. But the problem is that these kind of systems are very, very difficult to evaluate because it can have a lot of noise in the data that you have. There's no domain, no context. So it's very difficult to train full sentences out of these systems. So we have built methods for doing NLG on phrases, that to curating data and creating data pipelines and creating training data for ourselves, and which is quite a difficult task in itself. So that is where these statistical methods are coming into picture. But the problem with these systems is that you will never get the data that I'm talking about. Getting parallel corpus for different industries is almost impossible. The next problem is that a lot of training is required and a lot of computation is required, which is very difficult and sometimes overkill for the kind of project that we are doing. And the third and the last thing that is difficult to evaluate, because it's a probabilistic system. You're putting into production and it will generate something which might not be relevant for the kind of use case that we are doing. So this is where these three systems come into picture. So how is the ecosystem for NLG? So I will start with Gartner's quote. And what Gartner has said that by 2019, which is almost there, 90% of the BI tools like Click, Power BI, and Tableau would have some kind of NLG feature into them. So, and the thing is that they said it last year, and now I can see the changes. I can see the product being product have started actually evolving, and I can see these kind of features in whatever the product roadmaps that these companies already have. So what is the ecosystem is that you can create conversational interfaces, rich interfaces. I'm not talking about chatbots right now. You log into a system, the way system interacts, apps interact with you is one of the use cases. Then there is chatbots. And then the reporting solutions that I've already shown you about, that we are actually work a lot on. Then the BI tools, like in the BI tools, if there is some kind of narrative that we are talking about. So plugins, right now all the companies, NLG companies, have some kind of plugin for Click, Tableau that I would encourage you guys to go and check. Because if you have Tableau and you have a chart, you can actually have a plugin from many of the NLG players that are listed here, and you can directly get the insight what is there in the data directly. So these are plugins available. You should go and you should check that. And people are also generating video reports out of them. So this is also one of the use cases or one of the things people are started doing in the industry. And how is the ecosystem in academia? So in academia, I think NLG is still in a very raw form, because the kind of problem they're trying to solve is quite different from the problem that we have. So there are RNN-based methods, there are NLP-based methods that have been tried, but they have their own limitations, and fair enough limitations, but nowadays I have seen a lot of research being done on attention models, and I have seen a lot of work done by Google's brain team. And GANs have also come into perspective, because as I said that training data is the main problem with these kind of systems. So if we can use some kind of unsupervised methods for training this. So I think recently, I think last week only, Facebook came up with a method of training translation systems from unsupervised data. So this is something that they have come up with. So this was very interesting, and I'm actually following those kind of things right now. So how to generate phrases or language out of training data, or when we don't have much of a training data. So this is how academia is responding to NLG right now, but I will still say it is in quite a raw form. So I will, since it's a difficulty and time is not there, so I will mostly skip a lot of it. So why language is difficult to model is because the way we use it. So we will not write you are, we will write your. So this is the kind of problem that we human beings have generated for ourselves. And now we have, it's not, the system will not understand what is New York, right? For it, it's a new and it's a York. It's completely two different words it can take into consideration. So this is also a problem that systems can have. Now we have idioms, like we have created our own way of saying things. Like this idiom, like, you can have the cake and eat it too. It took me quite a time to understand what it basically means. So for a human being, it's a difficult thing to do. So for a machine, it's almost impossible. So this is the kind of things like, unfriend, like, super like. So these are the words that it takes time for system to even understand, and putting into a language or grammatical model is very difficult. Or world knowledge. Let's say, Many of you know, who's Walter White, right? Because you know that you have seen, if you have seen Breaking Bad. But if I write, Walter White cooks blue meth, so white is a word or blue is a word. So getting the word or context is very difficult for a human being. So it requires a lot of knowledge to actually model these kind of systems. And tricky entities like name of the movies or songs in itself is a very difficult thing to actually model. So other challenges which are very specific to NLG is that there's a lot of knowledge base or domain is required. And the second thing is the context. So I think the only biggest problem right now any language system has the context, what to talk about, what kind of words to choose, and how to talk about it. It's very, very, very difficult. Like right now in financial industry, a 5% increase in the stock might be a, let's say a marginal increase, let's say, but in your blood, hemoglobin level should be like 0.1% or something. I'm just giving an example. I don't know what is the real number. Let's say it's 0.1, and if it increases to 0.3, there's an increase of 0.2 only, but it's lethal. So that is the kind of, so when you're writing for different reports of different industries, so even different magnitudes, you have to report in a different way, and this can be done only by learning over what is there in the data already. So these are the challenges that we have, and evaluation is something, the main problem. So there's actually no evaluation metric right now for NLG systems. So what we do is we use blue scores and rogue methods and word error rates and all those things. But still, it will never be able to capture how a human being writes. There's no way of doing it right now. So evaluation is I think one of the most difficult problem right now that we are facing as people from NLP or NLG and these kind of backgrounds where there is a lot of unstructured data. And now I will just, this is my last slide, and I will talk only about how we are trying to solve this problem. So what does a person who generates a report brings onto the table? He has his domain experience, he has his analytical skills, and he has his communication skills. Domain experience, something that he has built over learning over a very long time, working in a career for let's say in finance for 20 years. And this is his skills. Analytical skill is analysis that he knows. What are the things, KPIs that he can calculate, he can look around. And NLG is the last part. So what we do is that we have our own analytical framework. So let's say that we want to generate a sales report. So I know what kind of analytical things that is required in the industry. So I have my KPIs and all those things already ready. Now the second layer is the decision models, how to talk about it and what should be the, how to talk about is one thing and what kind of words to choose. That I said that, magnitude, how to, report magnitude. So this is something, if I have 100 KPIs to talk about, but only 10 or 15 would be useful or something that is worth reporting. So deciding which one to choose and applying language over it is something which is, which actually natural language generations come into picture.